My name is Jan, and welcome to Cinemind. The year 2025 was to date my busiest year watching movies, and among the many that ended up in my letterbox diary, there were a lot of weird ones in the mix. I thought it would be fun to look at them, starting with the ones I didn't like as much and going up the list to my favorites. Maybe there'll be a few good additions to your watch list. Before we get started, let's lay out the criteria that have to be met for a movie to end up on this list. The film either has to have a very irregular and weirdly told story, and/or has to have elements that are incredibly stylized to the point of being surrealist.
And as a heads up, there will be a few minor story spoilers, however, nothing big. Inland Empire. As the last feature film by Lynch, this movie stands apart from the rest. It is 3 hours long and used digicams for its recordings. As with other Lynch movies, the story is secondary to the vibes this movie evokes. Unfortunately for me, the vibes were off with this one. It was quite enraging to have to endure 3 hours of jump scares. What I enjoyed about the movies by Lynch higher on this list, I couldn't enjoy here because the jump scares made it difficult to let myself fall into the atmosphere. Making them sparse would make the movie more suspenseful. Having them happen every 5 minutes made me annoyed and not invested at all in the emotions of the film. David fumbled the ball big time with this one. Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a cult classic and a retelling of the age-old Dracula story, with a few twists, namely a more pronounced love story at its center, and a lot of Dracula backstory. Unfortunately, I did not really get why this is a classic, at least from a story perspective. The style is spot on, but the story, the story is so terrible, horrible, badly acted and just pure kitsch. I did not jive with it at all, and my burning hate for the narcissist that is Coppola made it even worse. Return to Oz. I really enjoyed the first Wizard of Oz, so I decided to give the second one a shot, and it was quite astonishing how unhinged this movie got. From putting Dorothy in an asylum where she's about to be electrocuted, to seeing a queen remove her head, to the uncanny gnome king, to the elk couch bird thing that gave me the creeps. This movie was full of things that are not supposed to be in a children's film. It was truly amazing how creepy this one got. And also truly amazing how, in my opinion, little this vibed with the world of Oz. Where the first movie was full of wonders, this just made me feel like having eaten a half-spoiled Indian food. Naked Lunch. Another cult classic. The infamous book Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs had long been considered unadaptable, until Cronenberg took a shot at it in the 90s. It tells the story of a cockroach exterminator that gets high of his own product and starts to hallucinate. While I do get why this movie is a masterpiece for others, I did not vibe with it at all. Peter Weller's dry performance together with the completely bonkers world did not really catch me. This is not the kind of surrealist work I like. I don't really jive with jumbled and odd stories. If you're gonna be weird, make dream logic-y stories that you have to piece together yourself. Blue Velvet. A similar problem that I had with Naked Lunch, I also had with Blue Velvet. I do get the themes, but I think that Lynch works best when there is no coherent plot. This movie really suffered from its own conventionality, in my opinion. While Frank Booth was a standout character, I have to say that Laura Dern's and McLachlan's performance were incredibly lackluster.
It was a pretty average movie for me that didn't move me in any particular way and that I immediately forgot about. Eraserhead. There is a lot about this movie that I love. I love the rundown aesthetic, I love Jack Nance's performance, and I really love the balls on Lynch for making this his feature film debut. The dialogue is very eerie and depressing, which completely enhances the general weirdness of the movie. However, it did not really connect with me emotionally. It somehow felt very dry and not at all like Lynch's other films. Hourglass Sanatorium. Funnily enough, what I said about Eraserhead also applies to this movie. I think conceptually, this movie really works. It can be seen as a man exploring his own psyche and his childhood memories, and I do see the metaphors regarding colonialism and the Holocaust. The aesthetic is really strong with this one as well, and it is beautifully shot. But the movie also did not connect with me emotionally at all. There were too many high-concept dialogues that made it really hard to follow the characters' emotions. Also, it was really jarring that literally every woman in the film had her boobs out, like what the fuck? The director was horny as hell, and I think it really took away from the immersion of the world. Sirat.
Sirat follows a dad and his son traveling from rave to rave through the Moroccan desert to find his lost daughter.
This movie, opposed to Eraserhead and Hourglass Sanatorium, connected with me incredibly well on an emotional level. The techno music that blasted through the screen completely sucked me into the world. I had a very visceral experience watching it. And this was what I loved, but also what I really hated about the movie. It felt like it tried to force me into being disturbed, which worked, but which still felt forced and not well integrated into the rest of the ideas and the plot. The director even said in an interview that he wanted to lure the viewers in and then confront them with visceral ideas. While I appreciate this approach intellectually, it felt kind of violating and tasteless to me. However, this movie really deserves a rewatch, and I applaud it for probably being the first techno road movie there is. La Antena.
The movie takes place in a dystopian city where all the inhabitants have lost their voice. It examines authoritarian regimes through the lens of its surrealist world.
La Antena was a really interesting experiment that paid homage to the silent era. It worked really well integrating the visual motifs of silent era movies into the plot. The stylization worked so well, and I did not feel the small budget at all. However, the pacing is what really dragged this one down in my opinion. It felt like a drag even though it was only 90 minutes long. Still a very coherent, artistically strong and good movie though. The Fall.
The Fall takes place in a 1920s Los Angeles hospital, where an injured stuntman connects with a young immigrant girl through telling her wonderful fairy tales.
This is a cult classic in the Letterboxd community, and I do see why. The performance of the child actress was so authentic, and the movie really did feel like a story being told to a child. I liked how the narrative layer of the fairy tale was made even more surreal by the Dali-isms of the cinematography and the design of the world. Also, the transitions were incredible. But the dark plot twist the movie had really did not jive with me. It did not merge well with the rest of the script and devalued the narrative leading up to it. Similar to Sirat, I felt that the scriptwriter had an idea that he felt very strongly about, but didn't really care to make it flow with the rest of the plot. Alice. This movie was a perfect, eerie, surrealist take on the famous fairy tale of Alice in Wonderland. The design of the characters was very creative, and the way they shrunk down Alice into a stop-motion puppet enhanced the creepiness. Also, the rabbit. The freaking rabbit. It still lives in my nightmares. The reason why this movie is not higher on this list is that the pacing felt a bit off, once again, and that the sets were just basically the same room redecorated. While that did fit the story somewhat, it still made the world feel very restricted. Still a very competent and fresh retelling of a famous story. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
The film can be seen as a semi-autobiographical work by the famous writer Hunter S. Thompson, who drives to Las Vegas with his attorney to write an article on a dirt bike race that is taking place in the desert. The trip soon turns into a drug-induced frenzy.
On a second viewing, I really loved this movie. It was surprisingly funny, which I did not really notice as much the first time around. I really jived with Johnny Depp's performance and the primal screams that sometimes came out of Benicio del Toro's mouth still live rent-free in my head. It's a great film, a really, really great film. But yeah, the other movies on this list are even greater. Stalker.
The infamous movie by Tarkovsky follows a group of travelers in a dystopian future who venture into a restricted zone. The zone does not follow the laws of nature. So the longer the movie progresses, the more confusing their journey becomes.
This one is hard to rank. It was an experience unlike any other, and I really liked it because of that. A very intellectual yet also somehow spiritual experience. I loved it about this movie. It has a lot to say and invites many reviewings. But even only on a first watch, I already found it very, very aesthetically pleasing and engrossing. Mulholland Drive.
Another cult classic, often talked about as the best movie by David Lynch. An examination of Hollywood through the eyes of Betty Elms, a girl moving to LA to start her acting career. Another very surrealist and non-linear film.
Why is this not higher on the list? Well, while I loved the atmosphere, and while the singing scene in the theater made me tear up, I did find it hard to jive with the plot structure. I was invested in the first half, and then the plot made a shift that was, to me, kinda jarring. Maybe, however, this contention will fade on a second viewing, and I will learn to appreciate it as much as all the Lynch ultras. Hausu.
Oshare and a group of her friends want to spend their vacation at the holiday home of her aunt, but things are not as they seem in this old mansion.
This is basically a Japanese Evil Dead, and in the same vein as the first Raimi film, they turned shit to gold with this one. It still looks like $1,000,000, even though it was made in the 70s when visual effects were still very limited. The pacing was great, the elements jived very well together, but I have to say that horror comedies are usually not really my cup of tea. So this I appreciated more on an artistic level, rather than actually laughing at the jokes. Evil Dead 2.
A retelling of the original Evil Dead, which follows a group of friends traveling to a haunted house in the woods.
Same with this one. I chuckled more at the jokes and visual gags than in Hausu, and it was even more bonkers than Hausu, but I do have to say that I still don't completely love horror comedies. But when it comes to this genre, it doesn't get better than Evil Dead 2. Under the Skin. Under the Skin deserves a spot on this list because of its even more abstract, Kubrick-esque aesthetic. It feels heavily inspired by 2001, and that really works wonders with its sci-fi angle.
The less that is said about the story of this film, the better.
Would the movie have carried on in the same way the first half was going, it would have been close to the top, because the first half was conceptually and visually flawless. I really loved it. The second half takes these ideas and goes into a direction I did not like whatsoever, leaving me feeling very conflicted when the credits started to roll. But it is still worth a watch, also considering half of the performances were, improv with civilians in the tradition of the Iranian New Wave. And the music, my god, the music. It still sends tingles down my spine and makes my hair stand up when I think about it. Häxan. I expected a lot going into this, but what I did not expect was a feminist film that heavily criticized the Catholic Church. It came out in the 1920s and feels like it could have been released last year. The mixture of documentary and feature film segments worked surprisingly well, and it felt like a very elaborately produced video essay. Such a unique watch. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. What is there to say about this queer soap opera musical that hasn't been said before? I watched this in the cinema and in typical Rocky Horror fashion went in full drag. I had loads of fun with this and it really reminded me visually of the Holy Mountain. Also, the musical segments were really awesome and there was a surprising tenderness to the character of Frankenfurter. The Holy Mountain.
What a completely crazy movie. It delves into the ideas of transcendental meditation and reaching nirvana, and does so in a very unconventional way.
Fun fact, this movie is almost entirely sponsored by the Beatles, and George Harrison was even supposed to play one of the main characters, but Jodorowsky insisted he would have to show his rectum, and that was a bit too much for the fourth Beatle. Even without George Harrison though, this movie still slaps. The colors and sets are mind-blowing. The story has so much to say and does so in such an unconventional way. It really is a one-of-a-kind experience, but the reason it isn't higher on the list is because of its problematic portrayal of little people and people with disabilities, and because there were definitely a lot of animals harmed in the making of this movie. Beau is afraid. Anxiety. That's what this movie is about. It encapsulates this feeling in its entirety, and I felt that the movie captured my experience with that emotion exactly. The only bad thing I have to say about this one is the length. It flew by, but some parts still felt unnecessary. For example, why did I need the sequence where Beau stayed with the family? It didn't add any new ideas to the movie that weren't explored in other scenes as well. Still a very good film and my second favorite Ari Aster flick. Lost Highway. I know this is a very hot take, but this is the best Lynch movie by far, in my opinion. While Mulholland Drive portrayed tension, tenderness and beauty, Lost Highway just went off the deep end and had lust, fear and anger as its primary emotions. It was a very visceral experience. Maybe one of the most visceral watching experience I've ever had. And for that, I love it. The Substance. I already made a full video on this feminist masterpiece, but to summarize my thoughts, this movie uses the body horror genre to deliver an incredibly important message, namely the violence of objectification and sexism and what that does to its victims. This is a movie that I still think about a lot, and that is a very, very good thing. Possession.
The film takes place in Berlin. It follows a wife who wants to divorce her husband. We follow them as they fight and chase one another, while the conflicts get crazier and crazier.
A completely delirious watch. The flow of this movie is something else entirely. I did not understand half of what was said, but everything connected together in such a wonderful way. And the subway scene. My god, the subway scene. Watching it, I almost felt myself being possessed. The acting, the cinematography, and the script all were top-notch. I really need to give this one another watch because it is so rich in symbolism, and I have not even broken the surface of what all of its motifs and elements could actually mean. This is a certified masterpiece. This concludes my video about all the weird movies I have watched in 2025. I hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe you found some movies that you can add to your watch list. In any case, I would be very happy if you would click the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.